The FBI finding 30 new pages of documents about this controversial Tarmac meeting. You'll remember that back in June of 2016 between former President Bill Clinton and then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Why did it matter so much? Lots of investigations going on. Oh, and an election. Well, Judicial Watch now saying the feds only found the documents after the watchdog group caught them, the agency, hiding them. We've got the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, to join us now and explain. So as a result of a second lawsuit, you now know that there are 30 FBI documents, but initially the FBI didn't want to reveal that.
Yeah, back when the Tarmac meeting had happened, we asked for records from both the FBI and Justice Department about them. We got to Stonewall, we sued. Justice Department just recently turned over documents with the talking points that were blacked out that everyone heard about a month or two ago. But also included in that batch of documents were communications with the FBI. The FBI had told us they didn't have anything. So they came back and said, well, we're reopening the FOIA. And just the other day, they told us they found 30 new pages of records that they'll need, Pete, 6 weeks to review before they turn over to us.
Okay, so 6 weeks from now, sometime in October or in November, we'll be getting these documents. What would you anticipate these 30 documents might reveal?
Well, there'll probably be a lot of blacked out material, which if that's par for the course from the government. But certainly the FBI and Director Comey at the time, he expressed concern about the meeting and other things that were going on in the Justice Department in terms of the Justice Department's credibility and bias that was evidently protecting Hillary Clinton. So it'd be interesting to see if there were communications directly about that once this meeting between Clinton and Lynch took place, a meeting which took place just before Mrs. Clinton was to be interviewed by the FBI, and one that Mrs. Lynch admitted cast a cloud over the investigation.
You know, how often, Tom, you file these FOIA requests and lawsuits to get documents that the public deserves to see. How often do you feel like politics is what motivates what's actually released? Or do you feel like, for the most part, you get a straight deal?
Well, on sensitive topics like this, you've got to push in court to get the records. The agencies won't voluntarily turn them over. And in the case of the FBI, I think someone knowingly withheld this information from us and only fessed up to it once we called them out as a result of the Justice Department disclosing some information. There's no good reason that these documents shouldn't have been found, given the high-level nature of the communications that we found that the Justice Department had with FBI officials.
Well, it's counterintuitive that there wouldn't be some documents as well with the level of consequence of a meeting of this type as well. Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, thanks for being here and for your hard work. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, Peter.
Judicial Watch says the FBI has now found some new documents on that controversial 2016 Tarmac meeting between former President Bill Clinton and then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. This was after the FBI previously said it didn't have any documents with that. The meeting came at the height of the Hillary Clinton email probe and fueled Republican speculation that the Clintons were trying to influence the outcome of that investigation. Meanwhile, Lynch will reportedly be grilled on Capitol Hill this week. She'll testify. House and Senate lawmakers will look into the Russian interference of the presidential election last year. Let's bring in now Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, good to have you today. Let's start with the basics. What did we learn from these documents?
Well, we haven't gotten them yet. The FBI, when we had sued for them, they did supposedly a search, and they told us at the beginning of the year they didn't have anything. We had another lawsuit against the Justice Department for records about this Clinton-Lynch Tarmac meeting. And we did get documents from the Justice Department that showed that they were in communication with top officials of the FBI. So, lo and behold, the FBI comes back to us and says, we're going to reopen your FOIA. Actually, it was never closed since we were in litigation. And just the other day, they told us they found 30 pages of records that they need or they want until November 30th to give us the records. And we don't know what's going to be in the records, whether they're going to be all blacked out. But if I were the president, I'd be asking both the leadership of the FBI and Justice Department, what is going on here? What's with the stalling and what's with the obstruction? Because there may be an innocent explanation as to why these records were missing. But I find that to be a highly unlikely possibility.
All right. So they told you that you have to wait until late November. You don't know what these documents are actually going to look like because you don't have them now to compare them to what they'll look like after they're redacted. So you won't know what you're missing. So in the meantime, you want the president to step in. Is this something that Judicial Watch then makes a point with the White House, or do you just hope for the best?
Oh, we've previously told the White House that they should take the approach of extreme transparency on these corruption issues. And my view is the deep state doesn't want to release these records. You see it with the Clinton issues, you see it with the Obama issues, and you frankly see it with the Trump-Russia issues, because I think they know releasing the records would hurt people they like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and hurt people they don't like President Trump.
And when you talk with White House officials or whomever you've talked with, what have you been told in the past, or are you hoping to have some fresh conversations now? Because now the game has changed. Now the FBI has found something it said it didn't have.
You know, they hold their cards close to the vest. I think the White House probably would want to see the information released, but it's not clear to me the deep state wants to get it done. And at this point, you have to wonder whether it's just plain insubordination by top officials, the Justice and FBI, in terms of withholding information we have a right to under the law.
What about, and we were reporting this on Outnumbered when it happened, because it broke live during our hour last year. What about Lynch telling Comey, former FBI Director James Comey, to refer to Hillary Clinton's email scandal as just a matter and not an investigation?
Well, you know, that communication, if it happened and there are records about it, would be covered by this lawsuit. We haven't seen it yet. We've asked for the FBI records about the Clinton investigation. And we've gotten records, but they've only released about half of the records they have. So for every record they give us, they withhold another one. Again, this is why the administration at the top levels needs to pay attention to this issue, because this corruption is a major issue for the American people. And this is why people like Jeff Sessions and the new FBI director have their jobs, is because people wanted the swamp to be drained. And when you get this obstruction, Harris, this is the sort of thing that drives people crazy, because they know the records can be released. We're not asking for state secrets. We want to know what the government was up to on this corruption issue.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you put it in that way, because they certainly have not labeled it this way, the FBI or anybody else. Real quickly before I let you go, and I hear you wanting to give the FBI agents maybe a benefit of the doubt. Maybe somebody went rogue, maybe somebody made a mistake, whatever it may be. But the point is, and what the American people might want to ask is, what significance is this when you talk about a cover-up?
You know, when we asked the State Department for records, they said they looked everywhere. They didn't have Hillary Clinton emails. And it was Judicial Watch FOIA litigation that forced their hand and forced them to disclose that they had all these Clinton emails. This reminds me of that, to be frank. That's what this reminds me of. The FBI only gave us, coughed up these records, or will cough up some of these records in the least, I hope, only because we caught them red-handed in another FOIA lawsuit. It's really troubling.
Tom Fitton of the Judicial Watch, we'll check back with you as we get closer to that deadline when the FBI says they're going to hand you some of those documents. Thank you very much for joining us, Tom.
You're welcome.
Breaking news on the FBI's decision to reopen its search for documents on that secret meeting between former Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton last year. The department initially claimed there were no documents that existed on the meeting. Well, the American Center for Law and Justice knew that wasn't true, demanded some answers. They've gotten hundreds of pages of emails, and they've made some interesting discoveries. Jordan Seculo is an attorney for the group behind the request for information from the FBI. Good morning, Jordan.
Good morning, Shannon.
All right, I understand that you have uncovered something that may link back to now Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Tell us about that.
That's right. So we've been going through these 413 initial pages that were delivered by the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice actually did say that they had records when we took them to court and sent them over these 413 pages a couple of weeks ago. So we've been kind of going by them line by line, individual by named individual. And we found yesterday, one of our attorneys was going through this, younger attorneys was going through this, and he found that one of the names that was not redacted by the FBI, but was an FBI press official who received an email from the Washington Post about whether the FBI agents and Bill Clinton's security detail, President Clinton's detail, coordinated the meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on the tarmac in Phoenix. The press official contacted at the Department of at the FBI, at the Department of Justice, is now the head of press for Robert Mueller's special counsel team. His name is Peter Carr. So Peter Carr was directly involved in the Loretta Lynch, Bill Clinton tarmac meeting response and press response, and now he's leading the press team for the special counsel investigating the Trump campaign in Russia.
And my understanding is, I mean, a lot of these are redacted. I think the one involving him may have been redacted as well. Were you able to glean any other information? I mean, besides his name, I know that you guys are going to go back to court to fight to uncover what a lot of these redactions are.
Yeah, I mean, right now, this is what it looks like where we've got Peter Carr's name. And so it's basically just we know that he received this request and received this information, Shannon. The next step is then getting to what was his response. How did he respond? And remember, all we got, Shannon, were email documents, 413 pages of email documents. There are also, we know that Jim Comey's FBI and Department of Justice, they love making memos. Not all of those are protected by privilege. And so we're actually in discussions now with the Department of Justice and the FBI, since they've now had a come to Jesus moment on reopening their FOIA investigation and search for documents. So we're now in conversations now. We hope we don't have to take them to court, but we might just have to get these documents.
Yeah, so you've been notified by the FBI that, yeah, they're going to reopen this and look.
Right.
How much more do you expect to get at this point?
Well, I mean, if the Department of Justice could produce about 400, even with some redactions, and that's not, we don't think, everything, I believe that the FBI, there's enough people named on these emails from the FBI, to and from the FBI, press shops and agents, that you could, and redacted FBI. There's a lot of FBI redactions in these, so they were really looking through this on their own. We got, by the way, that reopening, Shannon, a week after we broke the news that the DOJ had given us the FOIA. So they weren't acting in good faith, but we're going to treat it now as a situation where they say they're going to cooperate. I expect hundreds of more documents.
All right, I want to ask you about something else, because you all were key in this fight with the IRS over the last few years, finding out that they were targeting conservative groups, refusing to give them their tax-exempt status, and that blew up into congressional hearings and all kinds of other things. And now we get this report from the Inspector General for the IRS saying between January 2015 and March 2016, so President Obama would have been in office, IRS Commissioner Koskinen, who's still there despite a fight to get rid of him, that during that time they rehired 213 IRS employees, some of them let go for theft, others for unauthorized access to personal taxpayer info, all kinds of bad behavior. And apparently the IRS hiring managers do not have access to the applicant's employment history with the IRS. So a bunch of these people didn't even tell the IRS they had been fired by the agency when they reapplied and were rehired.
This is the problem, Shannon. We talk about draining the swamp. It's not just elected officials. It's these unelected bureaucrats. People like Koskinen, who thankfully are done in November. I mean, I'll be glad to see him go. We're still in court with the IRS. We've got all the groups cleared, but this is an agency that is, we believe, maybe incapable of self-correcting, that you may have to do away with completely. It's so corrupt, it's so bad, poorly run, and it's just such a mess that you need a complete overhaul. Now, that would take Congress and President Trump working together, but this should be one of those examples of bipartisan support. People who are doing things that are illegal on their taxes, getting fired by the IRS, should not be able to get rehired. And of all places, you would think the IRS would have their information on their own employees.
All right. Jordan Zecchio, many updates to come from these two stories, so please keep us updated with them as they roll in. Good to see you.